So we're going to talk about the growing epidemic of phone addiction, and particularly the issues and the considerations with short form content. This is ProGain Knowledge. Welcome back, everyone. Jumping right in. The first question, is short form content damaging to your brain? We've all heard the idea of brain rotting. From what is understood right now, you are not conducting permanent damage or actually losing brain cells, as a lot of people will dramatically emphasize. However, lots of short form content does have the ability to deteriorate your attention span and your ability to complete a task. And that's more about processing and behavioral patterns than it is like the actual anatomy or physiology inside your head. So, what has been shown so far? In a study by Haliti-Sylaj and Sadiku et al., they looked at undergrad students, and in that group, this was an observational study. They weren't testing anything necessarily in terms of controlling and then only changing one variable. In the study, they examined real consumers, and reels here just means short form content in kind of bite-sized pieces. So that includes Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Meta, YouTube, whatever it may be. And they found that people who had 3 hours or more daily had significantly higher error with a task they gave them compared to the less than 1 hour group. And interestingly, they had a slower reaction time, a statistically significantly slower reaction time. Now, the range in this study in terms of short form content was 1 to 6 hours per day. The average was 3.5 hours, and the standard deviation was 1.2 hours. So that's a lot. That is a lot. That means that 2 standard deviations away from the mean, right? That would be 2.4. 3.5 minus 2.4 is 1.1. So that means that 95% of people were having at least over an hour per day. So we don't necessarily know what duration of short form content is required to start to have those effects, right? It's very, very likely that 10 to 15 minutes a day on average is very different than an hour and a half, or the average student here was 3.5 hours. That's a really big jump. And 75% of the students studied were watching short form content daily, every single day. So you can kind of already see that, yes, there's damage that's being shown, and short form content is not very good for your brain health, not in terms of the physical, health, but in terms of behavioral brain training, focus, attention, memory. But it seems that higher doses and repeated exposure is particularly damaging. And the likely reasons for that are because short form content changes the context or what you're viewing very, very quickly. This was something spoken about by Andrew Huberman, if you know who that is. He talks about context switching. His example was that in real life, when you're going to go from one room to the other, your brain has the entire time of you standing up, walking through the doorway, entering the new room, and then processing. And there's a whole motor section of that being involved. You have to move yourself around in order to prepare yourself to be in a new room with a new environment. Same thing like going outside. You put your shoes on maybe, and then you have to walk through the door and physically go somewhere. With short form content, your brain gets to change contexts almost immediately, right? You don't have to take even the 2 seconds to get up and go actually leave the room. It's just you're somewhere else. And you can be watching a video from, someone in another country, to your friend, to a movie clip that you like, to a cooking tutorial. It's just, you can be everywhere really, really quick. And that's very likely one of the reasons that it can be problematic for attention span, is it's training you to have a really short attention span. And there was a correlation with increased reels and decreased GPA, and this is likely because you get worse at focused tasks. It's harder and harder for you to focus for longer periods, and your attention and memory can slightly devolve. Now, from what has been studied so far, at least that I could find, all of this does seem recoverable. So again, it's not likely causing permanent damage to your brain or actually destroying brain cells as far as we know right now. And you can start to see all of this return within even just a couple of days. So taking some time and doing something that requires some more focus, like reading or, maybe watching a full movie all in one sitting without any kind of other distractions or those kind of things, longer forms of content, transitioning over to that can be very helpful. And it seems that your brain seems to enjoy that as well. Now, if you are going to use short form content, some interesting things that you could probably try. Everyone knows time limits are going to be your biggest friend in terms of limiting the total amount of time that you're spending scrolling. I've already talked about my recommendation that you get rid of it Monday through Thursday. Again, in most of these studies, these were people who were using it chronically, right? 75% of the people were every single day. The average of those people was 3.5 hours, right? Even if you had an hour every day that you had one of these apps, but you deleted it Monday through Thursday, you're only at like 3 hours a week, which is very, very different from 3.5 times 7 is what, 24-ish hours a week. That's a huge, huge gap, right? And then some other interesting things you could consider trying. Now, these do not necessarily have studies to back them up, right? I'm not suggesting this as like a cure, or this is not any kind of medical advice. But from what we know, again, the issues are really rapid context switching and your ability to just say, I don't like this, move on, right? It used to be the case that if you bought a movie ticket, you were gonna sit there even if you didn't really like the movie, most likely, for an hour or two. Now, if you don't like something in 3 seconds, you can just move on and be somewhere else, right? So, some interesting ones you could try. Slow down the speed of your scrolling. As weird as it sounds, I've done that before when I'm, my friend sent me a video on Instagram and then I'm going to the second or third video they sent me. Instead of trying to like tap through them really quickly or scrolling, I've clicked on it, watched the video, exited out, took like an extra 2 seconds and said to myself, I'm changing videos now, very slowly. And then like really slowly with my hand went and clicked the next video. I don't have any like study to back this up, but it seems to kind of make sense that if you slow down the rate at which your brain can be berated with new context and new information and new worlds and videos, it might help your brain kind of retain the ability to pause and look at things differently. Because a second or two is what it takes in real life to change rooms. So you can even just slow down the speed of you scrolling. Another tip is to change how you view the videos that you're watching. Maybe instead of it being passive entertainment, you're actually writing down notes from it. If you're watching a cooking tutorial, right, and those can be valuable for sure, actually take little notes or focus on saving the video or, screenshot one of the parts of the recipes, because creating some engagement with it is going to be a lot more helpful than just the mindless, like, you're sitting there and everything's being fed to you, right? Go kind of reach out with your brain and engage a little bit. And then the last thing is stay for some boring videos. Sometimes it can be really, really helpful. I've caught myself on YouTube. You're watching a video that's pretty interesting too. And yet it's so easy to be like scrolling into the recommended below and be like, what am I gonna watch next? What am I gonna watch next? And I've made myself just sit through the last 3 minutes of a video that I wasn't interested in. Because at some level, you pick the video, watch the whole thing. And no, you're not like forced to watch it in any sense, but I think it can be good for you sometimes to have to watch something that is maybe a little bit boring or that's not as stimulating, especially if you picked it initially. And again, it'll slow down the rate at which you're being fed new information, and it will decrease the number of like immediate dopamine hits you're getting, because maybe you have to watch a full video. Do with that as you will. I hope you'll take some of this advice, look at how short form is in your life, because at the end of the day, it's in our world now. This was something I wrestled with a lot personally, because if you watch these videos, you know that I talk about how short form in social media can be problematic. but I post short form content on my Instagram. Although I try to keep every video at least 30 seconds to a minute long, so it's not like hyper short. However, we are in a world now where it exists. At some level, yes, you could absolutely unplug. You're completely free to do that. I have gotten rid of Instagram for weeks at a time before, maybe even months, and it can be kind of nice. But if you're in a situation where there are positive things, maybe you're trying to run a business, maybe you're trying to promote a YouTube channel or a music career, right? Or, or you're a DJ, or any of the many things that Instagram or social media can be good for, there are reasons to have it. Maybe it's even just that you like watching this one person's journey with something, and then this other person, you use their recipes every day, or that you actually have a fitness plan that you found online, right? There absolutely is value in it. And so I don't want to sound like I'm, completely anti-technology, because again, at some level, I have accepted that we're in a world with this technology. Just make sure that everything is being used well, and that you're looking at your relationship with social media, especially short form content, and making sure it's one that's healthy, because a healthy relationship with that is going to leave you a lot more fulfilled and a lot happier. This is Pro Game Knowledge. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.